6 months ago, it was all very exciting. The hockey club to which I belong, Longford HC, had just announced that they have been invited to send a team to an international tournament for amateur players being held in Bangkok next spring. Naturally I, and my fellow first-team players, all hoped to be selected. However, as the club committee cautioned us, it would be necessary to raise a considerable sum in the intervening months in order to fund the trip. It didn't take much discussion before we all declared we were up for the challenge. By the way, my name is Charlie Hunt. I'm 20 years old and play forward on the left wing for our team. A budget for the 3-week visit was calculated and everyone set about coming up with ways to raise the money. We were fortunate in that a number of local businesses agreed to sponsor us, and one local retired entrepreneur came across with a donation of £10,000. This provided a very solid base on which to build. The money in the pot grew steadily until it reached the point where the club committee was confident to be able to accept the invitation. We members redoubled our fundraising efforts. One highly lucrative event was the Tarts and Vickers dance we organized instead of our usual Christmas thrash. A large marquee was erected on the hockey pitch and some 500 people attended. It probably doesn't need explaining, but there are a number of variants as to how a Tarts and Vickers party can be organized. In some instances the men dress in clerical garb, whilst the women go for a sexy street girl look. However, it is more amusing when the reverse dress code is adopted and it is the women who are required to try and look sexy whilst dressed as priests, whilst the men get into skirts and heels as ladies of the night. It was this latter approach we adopted for our club ball. One guy came in for a lot of stick when it appeared he had got the dress code wrong and had turned up as a vicar in a plain grey suit, black shirt, and clerical collar. It was only when he turned round that it became apparent that the entire back of his costume had been cut away, revealing that underneath he was wearing a bra, knickers, suspender belt and fishnet stockings. Not surprisingly, he won the most imaginative costume prize. My effort was tame by comparison. I too opted for suspenders and fishnet stockings, teamed with a leather miniskirt, sheer top, and black bustier. With an auburn wig and silver jewelry, I thought I looked quite tardy, but there were too many other guys going for a similar effect for me to stand out from the crowd. I must have done better than some of the other guys though, as I did get quite a few compliments from some of the women who said I made rather a pretty girl. Just what I wanted to hear, not. Anyway, the Tarts and Vickers ball was a big enough success and raised sufficient money to get us over the edge of our budget target. The trip was now on. The next challenge was to ensure selection for the team traveling to Thailand. More club members wanted to take part than could be accommodated and, in the end, there had to be a ballot to fill the last few places. I was fortunate. As a regular member of the first 11, I was allocated a place up front. Others weren't so lucky. Once the tour party had been selected, we trained hard together so as to ensure we could field our best team with in-depth cover for all positions. 1 month ago, eventually the time of the tournament rolled round. 30 of us boarded the plane at Heathrow, all fired up for the challenges ahead. For most of us it was our first visit to Thailand, and that in itself was thrilling. After a long and tedious flight we landed at Bangkok International Airport and were taken by bus to our hotel. I was totally unprepared for the traffic. Queues seemed interminable as our driver weaved his way through the outskirts of the city. Finally we reached the hotel and, thankfully, unpacked and went to bed. Our flight had arrived early evening local time, so with any luck a good night's sleep should help us overcome jet lag and adjust to the new time zone. The next few days were taken up with visits to the stadium where we would be playing, much bigger and more impressive than anywhere we had played before, and long sessions at the training ground. Finally, the tournament opened. Although international, it was still an event for amateur clubs, so there was no big opening ceremony. However, the president of the Thailand Hockey Association made a speech of welcome before the first match between the Bangkok Warriors and Canada's Toronto Falcons. For the record, the Bangkok Warriors won. Our first match was played the following morning against a team from France. We won. Like many tournaments, the early matches were played in a pool, before the top 2 teams went through to the knockout stage. We played well during the next couple of weeks and came second in our pool. We also won a couple of knockout matches, getting to the quarterfinals before succumbing to a Chinese team. Naturally, we were disappointed to lose, but we had had a good run and all members of our party were delighted to have had the experience of taking part in the tournament. With all our focus on the tournament, we hadn't had any opportunity to explore the city of Bangkok, so, now that we were out of the tournament, our team leaders said we could drop the discipline and enjoy ourselves for a few days. We had already committed to staying on to see the tournament final before flying home. I need hardly say that the whole group greeted this announcement with enthusiasm. We were taken on a bus tour of the city to orientate ourselves, and our guide explained how we should use taxis to get back to our hotel if we were to go out in small groups. He advised us not to explore alone. Bangkok proved to be a fascinating place and I spent a couple of days taking in the cultural sights. Also very different to life back home in Longford. It probably shouldn't have come as a surprise when on our second free day my mate, Simon, suggested that a few of us go and explore the red light area. I'm not suggesting we go on the pole, he insisted when a couple of guys demurred. Only you must have heard of Thailand's Ladyboys? Apparently it is hard to tell many of them aren't real girls. Whilst we are here we ought to check them out. A couple of beers later and 6 of us had signed up for the experience. We started by visiting a Ladyboy club recommended by the hotel concierge. He explained this was essentially a cabaret for tourists. Very safe and lots of pretty ladyboys, he told us. And so it turned out. The venue was essentially a theater with tables at which male waitresses in long evening gowns served us expensive drinks. The show was surprisingly good with fabulous scenery and costumes. The performers sang or rather lip-synced standard pop classics, interspersed with elaborate chorus numbers and a rather good drag comedienne. As we left after the show the girls were waiting to have their photos taken with members of the audience. For a fee of course. It is to help fund their transition, it was explained to us. The 6 of us all contributed to the cause. We had gone to a matinee performance, so after the show Simon suggested we venture into some of the streets around the theater as, somehow or other, he had learned this is where a lot of ladyboys hang out. It didn't take long for us to encounter our first group. As we walked down the street we were greeted by warm smiles and calls of, "Hello boys. You want a good time?" "That all depends," Simon called back cautiously. "You leave them and come with me," I heard a voice say. Turning round I found myself face to face with a dark-haired beauty wearing a blue silk dress. It took me a few seconds to clock what she was wearing as my eyes were immediately drawn to her splendid assets. "They are common tarts that will go with anyone," she continued. "They only interested in quick buck for fast sex. I know Western men often intrigued by us Thai ladyboys and want to talk first. My name is Susie. Buy me a drink and I tell you all about me and my friends. How are we to judge who was telling the truth? I for one wasn't looking to have sex with a transsexual, but I would like to learn more about these girls." I looked across to Simon. He nodded. "Okay Susie. We will go with you, but no funny business or we are out of here." Susie agreed and led us into a bar where we were joined by 3 of her friends. They introduced themselves as Candy, Miley, and Sheila. "Me called Sheila because I like Australian boys," she giggled. We all sat down at a table and a waiter brought over a tray of drinks. Beers for us blokes and a bottle of champagne for the girls. Well, we knew this outing was going to cost us. Susie started the ball rolling by saying, "Have you boys come to Thailand especially to have sex with a ladyboy?" The 6 of us spoke over each other as we all vehemently denied this. Simon interrupted, "Not at all. We are here on a sports tour but we couldn't be in Bangkok and not come and see the famous ladyboys we have heard so much about. I must say you are all very beautiful. I find it hard to believe you weren't born female." The 4 girls preened themselves, smiling at the compliment. Trevor, another of our group, asked somewhat tentatively, "Is it hard to transform yourself so completely?" Susie giggled. "Of course," she replied. "All girls, whatever gender they were born, have to work hard to appear at their best. I guess we Thais start with the advantage that we are mostly short and slightly built, but there are many Western boys who come here to Bangkok for their sexual reassignment surgery. Most of them end up realistic women. The conversation broadened as the rest of us joined in with our own questions, and Susie's friends gradually became less shy. We learned that transgender was socially acceptable in Thailand and that many trans women held down regular jobs. We are not just in the sex and entertainment industries, Susie told us proudly. When I have earned enough to pay for my surgery, I intended to go back to study and become a dental nurse. So in Thailand, anyone who wants to live as a woman is able to do so? Simon asked. What about Westerners? I guess it is harder for them. Oh, many Westerner can easily become ladyboy. It helps if they aren't too big, but with the right help it is quite easy for them to transform. We could show you by giving one of you a makeover. We all laughed nervously and drew back, but Susie continued, let us have a bet. We will turn one of you into a ladyboy. If you agree we have succeeded, you each pay us $100. If we fail, we will treat you to dinner. What do you say? Do we have a bet? Simon was the first to respond as the rest of us were dumbstruck. Well, if we do take the bet, Charlie would have to be the one you make over. He is by far the smallest of us. The other 4 guys let out a sigh of relief as I protested vehemently. No way. I don't think this is a good idea for a bet. And even if it were, why would it have to be me? Susie said she could transform most people. One of you could do it just as well as me. That's not true, Charlie, Simon reposted. Remember, you were far and away the most realistic of us at the Tarts and Vickers party. That shut me up because what he was saying was true. When we ran the fundraising event, most of the other guys had not made any real effort to appear feminine. They had just settled for being blokes in skirts, with ill-fitting wigs and crude makeup. That's hardly the point, I protested. Just because I made a bit of an effort then, doesn't mean I should be the one picked out now. But it was to no avail. The other 5 all thought Susie's suggestion an excellent one and happily agreed to the terms of her bet. Well, they wouldn't they, now that they can relax knowing I am the scapegoat? In spite of my objections, Susie and her friends dragged me out of my seat. We start now, she giggled. You all go away. Come back in 2 hours and meet your new girlfriend. If you agree we have done a good job, make sure you have the $100 each with you. Okay, said Simon. Have a good time, sweetie. To me. Laughing, the boys walked away, leaving me with the girls. Come along, Charlie, we have a lot to do, Susie said firmly as she dragged me out of the cafe and down the street. The other 3 girls were giggling madly at the thought of my discomfort. I was marched a few hundred yards down the road and into a dilapidated old house. Miley and I live here, Susie announced as I was dragged upstairs and into a bedroom strewn with female clothing. Take your clothes off and let me see what we have to work with, Susie instructed. I was very reluctant to strip in front of 4 ladyboys, but, as Sheila pointed out, no need to be shy, you don't have anything we don't. I quickly realized there was no way I was going to get out this. A makeover was inevitable, and if that were the case, there was no point in fighting further. Okay, you win, I said resignedly, pulling off my shirt. My trousers, socks and shoes soon followed. I hesitated when it came to my underpants, but Miley stepped forward and yanked them down. Instinctively I covered myself with my hands, which brought about yet more laughter. I joined in and, with a shrug, removed my last tiny bit of modesty. Susie looked at me critically. You are short and slightly built, she said, that is good. Also, you don't have much body hair. Here, use this cream to get rid of what little there is. She handed me a tube of depilatory cream. I spread it over my body and managed to only shudder slightly when she helped with the parts one couldn't reach easily. Leave for a few minutes until it itches, she instructed. Then, when I was itching unbearably, I was pushed under the shower, cold water, and watched my hair disappear down the drain. After the girls had helped pat me dry with a large, fluffy towel, they applied a floral-scented moisturizer which, they told me, would help neutralize any remaining depilatory cream as well as make me smell nice. Miley handed me a pair of white knickers. They were high-waisted, big pants and made of some stretchy material, with padding around the hips and butt. Tuck yourself back between your legs, she instructed me. We won't make you wear a tight dress so you won't need a gaff. These will hold you tight enough and you will be more comfortable. By now I was appreciative of any small mercy. Next a bra was slipped over my arms and Sheila fastened the clips while Susie rummaged through a cupboard. She turned triumphantly with a pair of silicone breast forms in her hands. I haven't needed these for a long time, she giggled, indicating her substantial tits. With the forms in place inside the bra cups and my chest flush pulled up, I displayed a surprisingly realistic cleavage. Looking at my reflection in a full-length mirror, I was shocked to see that below the neck I appeared quite feminine. Susie led me over to a dressing table and sat me down in front of a mirror. Now for your makeup, she announced. Your eyebrows are too bushy, she told me, but as this is only for today, I won't pluck them, for which I was very grateful. Listen carefully as I am going to teach you a trick of the trade. She produced a pot of wax that she worked into my brows before smoothing them down so the hairs lay flat along the bony ridge. She then applied pan stick over them and, to my surprise, my eyebrows disappeared. Next she rubbed a reddish cream over my cheeks and jawline. To hide beard shadow, she explained. By now I was looking pretty odd, but Susie soon fixed this with an application of a liquid foundation. After powdered this down, my face was entirely featureless. Now we can build up your female image, Susie told me. Susie began with my eyebrows, using a pencil to draw new ones that ran slightly above my natural line in a slight arch. This had the effect of making my eyes look bigger. She then applied a blue/grayish shadow with white highlighting the area under my brows. Next she glued on a pair of false eyelashes. Mascara and eyeliner completed the effect that, to my surprise, made my eyes look very exotic. Blusher and a deep pink lipstick were next, and then Miley produced an amazing auburn wig with curls that fell gently to my shoulders. In spite of myself, I suddenly realized I was quite enjoying all the pampering of my transformation. I might have been reluctant at first, but this was proving rather pleasant. While Susie had been working on my face, Candy had been painting my nails a pink to match my lipstick. Time to finish of dressing you, Susie said. Sheila held out a pair of neutral-colored tights. We don't normally wear hose in the daytime here in Thailand, Susie explained, it is too hot. But whilst your legs are quite shapely, they will look better if you wear these. Sheila helped roll the tights up my legs. I was glad of the restrictive underwear as her hand brushed over my groin. Miley held out a brown voile dress and Susie held my hand as carefully stepped into it. Miley drew it up over my shoulders and zipped it up the back. Susie slipped a pair of black, heel pumps onto my feet. The heel was only about 3 inches and I stood quite steadily in them. My previous experience with heels at the Tarts and Vickers party came in handy. Gold jewelry, I think, Susie said thoughtfully, fastening a simple choker around my throat and clipping linked hoop earrings to my lobes. She stood back and examined me carefully. We just need to soften your shoulders slightly, she announced. Another rummage through the wardrobe produced a black lace shrug that tied below my bust. My bust, I never thought those words would pass my lips. Gorgeous, Susie announced, as the other girls jumped up and down clapping their hands. I think we are going to win this bet. What do you think, Cheryl? I looked around. Who was this Cheryl who had just appeared? Susie laughed. That's you, of course. We can hardly call you Charlie looking like this, can we? I turned and looked in the mirror. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe my eyes. A really pretty girl was smiling back at me in my reflection. I raised my hand to my mouth in astonishment. The reflection did the same. It really was me. What have you done to me? I gasped. We've made you a proper Thai lady boy, Susie laughed. Do you like the new you? I hardly like to say, but yes I do, I replied nervously. The girls were thrilled and hugged and kissed me. Don't mess up Cheryl's makeup, Susie ordered firmly. Miley sprayed a mist of perfume around me as I contemplated my transformation. The dress the girls had found for me was brown voile, printed with a swirly white pattern. It was what I think is called a handkerchief dress. The skirt fell in pointed sections to just above my knees and twirled entrancingly as I moved. My auburn hair tickled as it brushed my cheeks and shoulders. There was no point resisting. I just adored the way I looked. I turned to the girls, tears welling in my eyes. "Thank you," I gulped. "I never thought you could make me look this good. I just love it." "Don't cry," Susie admonished, hugging me. "Your mascara will run." This resulted in all of us having a giggling fit. "Well, that's 2 hours gone," Susie announced. "Time to meet your public for judgment as to whether we have won our bet." "Well, you can have my $100 straight away," I responded. "As far as I am concerned, you have totally proved what you said you could do." "Oh, we aren't going to take your money," Susie insisted. "You are one of us now. In fact, you ought to share in the winnings." Feeling very vulnerable, I allowed the 4 girls to escort me out of the house and back into the street. My spirits perked up when I noticed other ladyboys smiling appreciatively as the 5 of us promenaded in a line across the road with me in the middle. By the time we reached the bar, I was starting to enjoy myself and put a strut into my step. "That's right, wiggle that arse, girlfriend." Miley giggled. It only took a few minutes to reach the bar where I knew my friends would be waiting. How were they going to react to me? I was fairly certain to get a good ribbing, but would they judge my transformation to have met the terms of the bet? I wanted Susie and her friends to win. Having submitted to being transformed, I want to be thought pretty. "Wait here," Susie instructed as we reached the door to the bar. "I'll go and set your friends up ready for the great reveal." Nervously, I waited with Sheila, Miley, and Candy until Susie called out, "Okay, Cheryl, come and meet some new admirers." I did my best to walk into the bar in as feminine and sexy a way as I could. I must have succeeded as I heard an indraw of breath as I appeared. "Bloody hell, Charlie, what have they done to you?" I heard Trevor gasp. I walked up to them. "Hello, boys," I cooed. "Who's going to offer a girl a drink?" There was a stunned silence, broken when Simon announced, "Okay, Susie, here's my $100. You win the bet." I wouldn't have recognized Charlie if I passed him in the street. "Not Charlie, she is Cheryl now," Susie insisted. The other lads handed over their share of the bet money with mumbled compliments to Susie for what she had achieved. "Come on, let's all have a drink," Susie announced. "Our treat, but with your money, of course." We sat down at a large table, boy/girl in order. I of course counted as one of the girls. The waiter handed round bottles of beer and glasses of wine. I wasn't asked what I would like but handed a sparkling white wine along with the other ladies. Once we had toasted Susie, Miley, Sheila, and Candy for their achievement, the party swiftly became rather jolly. "What's it like being made over into a woman, Charlie? Sorry, I mean Cheryl?" Trevor asked. "Well, it was weird as they started, but now I feel very comfortable," I confessed. "Well, I think you look very pretty," said Simon, and I felt his hand squeeze my knee under the table. Was this what this whole expedition was about? I thought. Is Simon into cross-dressed men, and does he see me as prey? I firmly removed his hand from my knee and gave him a glare. He only smiled back. "It's true, you do look better as a woman than a weedy man," he said. "I am not weedy," I riposted, "otherwise how could I be a good hockey player?" "Lots of girls are very good at hockey," he replied calmly. "Look at how well the England women's team do in international competitions." I suddenly realized I had fallen into a trap. I had challenged the fact Simon called me weedy, not that he described me as a pretty girl. I smiled weakly. "Okay, I confess. I do rather like the way I look. Susie and the others have brought out a side of me I never knew existed." "What, not even when you went to all that trouble to look feminine at the Tarts and Vickers party?" Trevor interjected. "No, that was just dressing up," I replied. "This time I feel these are the right clothes for me." Susie clapped her hands and squealed with delight. "I knew you were a ladyboy at heart the minute I met you," she announced. I knew in that instant that this wasn't something I was going to live down in a hurry. However, I made an attempt to limit the damage. "Look, fellas, I trust one can rely on you to keep this a what happens on tour stays on tour moment." "Not sure about that, Cheryl," Simon said, taking several photographs of me on his phone. "Please don't post them on Instagram," I begged. Too late, they've gone, he replied, to my horror. Well, the damage was done, nothing I could do about it now. And deep down I wasn't sure I wanted to anyway. My transformation into Cheryl had come as a shock, but ultimately a pleasant one that I had a feeling I would want to repeat. So if my transformation is made public on social media, I will have less explaining to do the first time I turn up somewhere at home wearing a dress. Well, shall we go back to the hotel? Simon asked. Okay. But I need Susie and the others to help me change back first, I replied. Oh, no need for that, Simon responded calmly. I've already had some replies from team members to whom I sent your photos saying they can't wait to see you in person. Thank you very much, Simon. I don't think. Still, the damage was done, so no point crying over spilt milk. Fair enough, let's go, I sighed, but I am so going to get you back for this. Everyone laughed. We will come with you, Susie announced. We want to see how your friends react. So we set off down the street with two girls either side of me. The boys followed, making snide remarks about my wiggle. Simon must have texted ahead, as most of the tour party seemed to be waiting on the steps of the hotel as we approached. Needless to say, I was subjected to a barrage of wolf whistles, but this soon slackened off as people began to realize that I didn't look like someone in drag, but made rather a convincing girl. Well, Charlie, it would seem you have had a rather adventurous afternoon, our coach said in a somewhat embarrassed voice. I decided to play up to my new role. Oh, it was dreamy, I gushed. You can't imagine how delicious it is to be pampered by 4 beautiful women. Susie and the others beamed with pleasure, partly I suspect because I had referred to them as women, not ladyboys. Coach didn't know how to respond to this and retired in confusion. Susie, Candy, Mael, Sheila and I were surrounded by the hockey players and swept off to the bar where we were plied with drinks. I was amused to see how quickly I was accepted as just one of the girls. We had a very pleasant hour or two before people started drifting away. We must go too, Susie told me. It is time for us to start our evening work in the bars. Maybe we see you again soon? I doubt it, I replied sadly. Tomorrow we are all going to the final of the hockey tournament, and then we fly back to England tomorrow night. But I can't thank you enough for giving me such a wonderful afternoon. Our pleasure, Susie smiled. Be sure you send us photos of pretty Cheryl from England. She had read me right and knew I wouldn't be able to make this just a one-time thing. We exchanged contact details and I promised to keep in touch. But what about your clothes? I asked. Let me go up to my room and change and you can have your things back. Susie declined. You must keep them. Your first items for Cheryl's wardrobe. With a final wave of the hand, my new friends left the hotel and disappeared back to their ladyboy work. I managed to escape from the crowd by saying I needed the lavatory. I headed for the ladies but sneaked off to the lift and up to the room I shared with Trevor. I quickly stripped off my borrowed finery and cleaned my face of makeup. I carefully folded my new clothes and placed them at the bottom of my suitcase. I just hope no one wants to examine my luggage at customs. I joined the rest of the team downstairs as Charlie in time for us to go out for a final meal together to celebrate the success of our tour. Fortunately, no further reference was made to my transformation into Cheryl, although I did notice Simon giving me some strange looks. I took care to avoid him as I had genuine doubts about his motives. The following day we, along with other competing teams, attended the tournament final. A team from India, who fully deserved their success and the trophy, won the match. After the game, it was a quick call back to the hotel to collect our bags before departing for the airport. Our flight was on time, and as I settled back in my seat to try and get some sleep, I reflected on my experiences over the last few days. I would never forget my trip to Thailand and my transformation at the hands of my ladyboy friends. They had woken something inside me that I never realized existed. I didn't know how I would manage it, but Cheryl was definitely here to stay. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction at the thought of my first female outfit nestled in my suitcase in the hold of the aircraft. Just the first of many, I thought happily as I drifted off to sleep,